Whoa, what a woman. Sup?
Whatever.
The show's packing quite the cast lineup, and Volume 2 introduced many new faces and several old ones facing new challenges. So how did I feel they performed this time out? Let's start with the B team of Beacon, Team Juniper. Obviously the future will be interesting in regards to affairs with Lai Ren following Monty's passing, but with what he had to deal with this last volume, he followed a similar path he took the last one, mostly just working off his colourful partner. His only prominent moment that wasn't combat or getting down on the dance floor was being the initial target for John in need of advice on girls, and that really didn't pan out to be a Ren scene. Okay, we did get him topless, so that's a positive for some Ren fans, and we got more playing around him and Nora being not together, but while Jean came to him first for advice, it was Pyrrha in the end who ended up doing the job. To be fair, it doesn't cause much harm for him since it does fit with what we know about him being a quieter face, and what little we did get of him this volume personally was still fun. There are hints though for him having a moment of focus at last coming soon, with mention of the village that his team was set to go on for their mission in the finale episode, clearly having some connection to Ren, so hopefully we'll get to see that plot point and more of Ren come the near future. His partner Nora didn't have too much to chew on either, though she did have a slightly interesting impact. Okay, she had several via her hammer and even with a watermelon of all things, and was a usual source of good laughs, but we also saw more of Nora beyond the chipper and badass. We saw her flustered again on the Ren relationship, but there was also a sign that she is very aware of what's going on around her when she quipped on a very sullen Pyrrha after she sent off Jean to go to Weiss. Nora telling Pyrrha to follow her own advice that she just gave Jean, which if anything shows that she does have a softer understanding side, caring about her friends, and it helps her from being more than just a wild child off in her own world. She's also seemingly linked to the aforementioned village, so if that comes in volume 3, we could see some more of soft Nora in the near future. For now though, both her and Ren could definitely use some more focus in my eyes, but I did enjoy what we got here, little as it may have been. Cause while Team Sloth was shorter focus, a lot of it was on Pyrrha and Jean similar to the volume previous. For the redhead, she probably got more than her partner did, even with him having some major moments. For starters, we saw the first sample of her training Jean building up from last volume, and there were more cracks forming with Pyrrha's tolerance and bottling her feelings whenever Jean mentions his interest in Weiss come to its biggest blow, as she pretty much just put aside those thoughts for what she felt was best to make Jean happy. Something really unselfish and very tough to do. Of course, the biggest moment for her was finally touching on some of her past, and why exactly she feels what she does for Jean, and what drew her to him in the first place. Because of that one initial reaction that he gave her in their first meeting. Pyrrha's been put on a pedestal as a truly gifted talent, and with that she's been seen by many as far too good for them, and this is her Pyrrha. The distance formed from this has left her feeling left out, and not seen for the girl beyond the talent. But Jean didn't even know who she was at first, and that glimmer of hope led to Pyrrha seeking out the boy, and to hopefully be his partner, which turned out to happen, and would lead into being friends with Nora, Ren, and those of Team RWBY and more. All from that one brief introduction with Jean. Her telling Jean this also pretty much formed alongside it a sort of confession of sorts, telling him that he's the sort of person that she would have wanted to go to the dance with. This was the first true instance we've seen of a side to Pyrrha beyond the skills that she's carried. Okay, we've seen her sad, annoyed, and teasing, but it's the first time that she's really let her guard down and finally opened up. A switch up if you will when Jean let down his shield to talk of his challenges and issues, and like that moment, this was a very entertaining watch. Plus the moment of her sacrificing her happiness for Jean's was an effective and very heartbreaking scene. Aside from that though, with her fight with Mercury, we also see that she's now a potential target for Cinder and her group. So no doubt she'll be facing a big challenge to come in the future, and these tighter bonds that she's gained over the past 2 volumes, especially with Jean, might be vital to her with whatever may come. it's great that Pyrrha's finally had time on her that's given her more dimensions. Jean himself this volume has, probably in my opinion, had a bit of a rocky ride, as the wheels on his infatuation with Weiss were starting to lose traction. Despite his numerous failings in the past, and getting closer with Pyrrha after its own bumps, Jean continued in earnest to gain the eye of the resident Ice Queen, and it was starting to become grating. It did provide with some laughs, I will admit, but it was time for this plot point to end before it became stale, or at least developed to avoid hurting those involved. I did say it in the past that it is natural for a young boy, or anyone of that age, to be a tad stubborn when it comes to crushes, and he should come out of it now looking the better. A chance now to see him under new plot points. It also had the benefit of him knowing full well in the end that his efforts were falling on deaf ears, and he even explained what it was about Weiss that he fell for in the first place. Weiss may have said that she's had a lot of people claim affection for her because of her last name's standing, but with Jean, his feelings for her felt more earnest. He knows that she's prickly a lot of the time, but despite that still saw her as smart, graceful. He even praised her singing, and he also admitted that he at least wished that she'd take some of his efforts as seriously as he felt they have, and at least that he could do so without messing it up. Again, a rather human and normal feeling to have. So at least it's not just the trope hopeless goof likes the pretty high-standing girl because she's gorgeous or whatever. And when Pyrrha finally all but spells it out about the impact that he's had on her, and possible feelings that she's had for him, it's the smack in the face that he really needed. He wised up to some of his actions around Pyrrha clearly having a negative effect on her, but he also noticed that he's been really forcing his confidence to grow, causing some very immature and silly outcomes. He also in the process helped Neptune wise up to consequences of his selfish actions, and realize his own immaturity before topping things off with making it up to Pyrrha, trading in some dignity to try and make amends. More of his deep kindness there. To another point, and though a small dose, we saw in the finale some improvements as a leader and a fighter in him as well, deciding as soon as the alarm went off to change their plans and help out where needed, in the meantime easing any sadness in Ren for missing out on the village mission with a promise to make it up for it later. And we even saw him handle, albeit rather ungracefully, an Ursa without any support. No doubt his biggest test in terms of his combat growth will come in the tournament, as he's still a work in progress. But it's good that he's not being rushed into being a stellar fighter, and he is still growing, leaving it to flow more naturally. So really, while he may have had a tad stressful appearance, I think that Jean came around in time to at least end the volume on an okay stroke. He's still a doofus and long may that continue, but I think he's starting to finally improve now as a character. At least, I hope so. Let's switch sides now and chat about two new faces to the fold of the villains, with Mercury and Emerald. Emerald opened up the volume with some nimble hands and smooth acting during a snuffing out gig, and it was a good first taste of what she's capable of. She's definitely the hot side of the twosome's hot and cold dynamic, as someone with a bit of a tendency to get peeved with Merc's cheeky attitude, and later on showcased a slight rivalry with Roman, the two of them clashing their egos a lot. We also saw that she's definitely someone who's capable of playing an innocent face on a mission, worming her words to play around with Tuxen before doing the dirty killing deed. The opening episode did leave something interesting about her though. This one subtle motion and response when it comes to Cinder. She almost beckoned to hug out and reach out to Cinder, and felt disappointed when she passed by, on top of eventually accepting being reminded her place when she in Cinder's eyes acted out of line taking the Tuxen gig with Mercury. It's definitely something of interest to keep an eye on, and it should play into why she's in the group to begin with. Do they share a past together, or does Emerald owe Cinder big time? Other than that, she wasn't really up to much else, playing second scout during Merc's fight with Pyrrha, and then working his eyes on the ground while Cinder got into the CCT. Her only other noteworthy moment was the small helping into how she fights in the finale, where we see that she's got a good marksman eye on her, and with her Sikorn Kusari Gamma forms, can make for some quick slicing and dicing. Another potential for the tournament to see her full skill, and I hope that it brings out more of her, but far from a letdown debut for this new face. Her partner Mercury had a tad more to work on, but still not as much. He too had a strong debut in the first episode. Compared to Emerald, Merc is the more laid-back mind, albeit definitely cheeky. He jumped at the chance to try and get under his partner's skin, and did so too with Roman and Tucson, no doubt enjoying the reactions. And like his partner, he didn't have much beyond one standout moment following this. While later on he did do some backup work, we saw he's got some majorly talented legs on him with his Greaves when he fought with Pyrrha and using it as a chance to scout her out. He willingly forfeited once he registered enough info, so while we don't truly know what he's like when he fully lets his skills do the talking for him, we can see that he's got a good mind to scout out his opponent on the fly and an awareness to pull the brakes when he doesn't need to go any further. He too was a nice, entertaining newbie to the show, and like his partner, I hope we'll see more of them in due time. Now back to the good guys, and with 3 particular ones to start. That being Penny, and the 2 members known so far of Team SSN, Sun and Neptune. With the resident robot girl, she only had 2 episodes for her serving 2 intended purposes. Reveal more information on who she truly is, and build on her bond with RWBY once she's aware of the truth. And while I would have liked to see more from her aside from some cute dancing later on, I'm fine with this outing. She had a big introduction in Volume 1, and it's clear that her next biggest moment isn't for right now. Even so, she did finally get into the much needed information on what she truly is. That being the world's first synthetic human being that can generate an aura. Something big, as aura is only found in humans and other living creatures, not counting Grimm. So an android being able to do so definitely has some interest as for what purpose. From what we know, it's hinted that it's something of a trump card in the hands of Mr. James Ironwood, who apparently is telling Penny that she'll one day save the world. While the idea that Penny isn't human wasn't a shock to those who have seen the finale episode of Volume 1 and speculated on things from then on, the reveal in this volume was, like I said in the past, more for the sake of seeing the reaction of RWBY and her stance on their friendship following it. That reaction being quick acceptance. She was definitely shocked, but Penny was equally shocked at how easy RWBY was fine with this news. The pure-hearted girl still seeing Penny as a human beyond her many metallic parts, and she still sees them as friends. Which, if I know anything about storytelling, will more than likely be tested in the future. But it's nice that we got it finally cleared up, and Penny's showcase at the tournament will be able to drive in new experiences for her and RWBY, and perhaps more into her creation and apparent use. While I'm okay with Penny's volume run, I'm a bit iffy on the 2 boys Sun and Neptune. The Monkey Boy was a late face last volume, and now he had a full volume to be a part of. And while not a major focus, he did pop up around frequently, as we see him trying to perhaps try and build upon his relationship with Blake now that she's back with her team, and hang out with his new friends. Perhaps even bordering on having a crush on the cat faunus girl, with later attempts to ask her to dance with no initial success, but later getting the chance to do so. It's interesting to speculate where this relationship might go, depending on the routes the writers plan to take with what Adam returning and all, but Sun and Blake for me have a rather effective and entertaining duo. Sun playing the quip-making light-hearted partner to Blake's more straight man mannerisms, and he also had more fun short moments with Weiss, making for some charming banter. Beyond that, it was kind of weird for Sun. We got to see his semblance, aura clones that propel forward while he's stationary, but it proved ineffective against the opposing mech, as did its user. Culminating with being showcased in the finale a bit too comedic for the scene taking place, which I'll go into in a bit. However, he did at the start bring in his fellow teammate Neptune, who for me, kind of had the bumpiest ride of the roster, new or old. He had for me a very good first impression, having some charming charisma bouncing off well with Sun, showcasing their already strong friendship, and providing some interesting moments with Weiss. But he also petered out as the volume went on. We definitely saw a fair bit to him as he started out as the cool dude with even a notion from Sun that he's a nerd, or as he called himself, an intellectual, but we also saw that he's a massive flirt, quickly warming up to Weiss with surprising success despite using a similar tactic to Jean, and then being later won over by Yang with a no-nonsense nature around Junior, and then not even a minute later trying to score points with the Malachite twins. This side of him can be funny and it did make me laugh at times, but after a lot of Jean being the resident flirt, I hope it's not a constant or dominant side of him, especially when we do see that he's also not the best social talker as well. The dude's rocking the cool guy attitude as an image though, we later find out, and any faults he may have, like his poor social skills or being unable to dance, he tries very hard to hide to maintain that persona, even turning down a dance invite from Weiss for that very same goal, coming off rather selfish where even a now wizened up Jean snaps him out of this trend and realizes that his reputation isn't important when it ends up hurting others. Then there's the full stop for ill-timed comedy in the finale episode, where honestly, he and Sun get a rather poor dealing, played as the comic relief in what's supposed to be a very serious, important fight, and yet celebrating despite never being shown in combat. It kinda hurt them for some, and for me it definitely wasn't needed, or could have easily been fixed with at least one small sign of them actually helping out to at least balance it out. Neptune at this point needs a booster for me. I rather liked him at the start, but as the volume went on he kinda needed something more than a kick up the backside to fix his attitude. We did see he's got a nifty gun, glaive and trident form weapon in his control, but I'd like to have seen an example of his intellectual side, or more to him beyond the suave identity that he portrayed, though I guess it was his introduction to the show so I'll give him a slight pass. What was missing though for him and Sun was the rest of their team, Scarlet and Sage. It felt odd that the two weren't around beyond being a background shot, and it's guys who could have shown more signs to Sun and Neptune and helped them have more to do, and it kinda left them feeling like half of a person, especially when the absent pair were previewed in the volume's opening. I'd be shocked if they didn't appear next volume, because while Sun is still fun and entertaining, and Neptune did have an interesting introduction, we need to see what their teammates bring in terms of their personality and relationships, alongside seeing what these two themselves are like. Let's talk now about some of the more minor or less focused characters. Team Cardinal basically got played for punching bags for Miss Nikos, and I believe they won't be in the tournament, so I do wonder if they'll be involved in anything important next volume, if anything at all. The volume did finally give us Velvet's full team, and a kick-ass introduction to boot for Team Coffee. And even though Velvet herself, let alone her team, didn't do too much until the finale, it was nice to see a side to her that wasn't a victim of Cardin's bullying or being a shy member of the class. We've seen a more natural side to her now, and the idea that she's actually an older student than the main cast adds a nice twist. And while I'm disappointed we didn't get to see her using a weapon, what little we did see of her in combat is a nice bite size of what we'll hopefully see come the tournament and beyond. Same can be said for her teammates, who recently via Sheena have had their last names revealed. There's Yatsuhashi Dachi, whose last name ironically can mean large earth, fitting for a guy who looked like a brick wall when he took on several Grimm and shielded Velvet from the spikes. With him being her partner, taking care of her on their previous mission too, we can expect that he's a very friendly giant as well. Then there's Fox Alistair, who, while we can't guess much of his personality, his combat leaves some interesting prospects. He's quite the athletically strong fighter, and his tomful-like blades do some good work on top of some good aura blows, popping one Grimm like a balloon. But the intrigue is from his mannerisms and his eyes. They look pupilless and pale, and from the way he looked around in the middle of fighting, it almost gives off the idea that he's blind, and he may be using his aura to sense around the area with heightened senses, kinda like Daredevil, one to watch for sure. And of course we had the standout of the finale battle, Miss Coco Adele, the only other member with a voice, provided by Ashley Jenkins. Her confidence with even a Grimm in front of her definitely meshes well with what little we've seen of her personality already, and leads to her being one of the more expressively sassy girls on the show. Probably down to her experience at this point as a fighter, as well as her insanely powerful weapon. While her handbag is a good hammering force, no doubt her power comes in spades through one hell of a Gatling gun. It does leave the question of what she's like in combat when she can't depend on being a stationary bullet storm, but she was able to kick a Grimm in the gonad, so make of that what you will. but it's a sass, proven with a pat on Fox's ass, smack-talking a grin for the destruction of a favourite shop, and a all-around attitude that makes for quite the colourful face.